Welcome to the Dome with Bernard Schoenburg on sj-r.com. I'm Chris Wetterich. I'm the assistant editorial page editor at the State Journal-Register. Bernie, at the State House this week, budget negotiations continued. Where do you think this is going at this point?
Well, I think we're in a mess, and if you're a state worker or someone who depends on state projects, you know it's a mess because you're not sure where the budget is going. When the legislature got done at the end of May with their scheduled session, they passed a budget that only funds many human services at about 50% of the levels required. The hole in the budget is estimated to be about $11 billion or more. Even when you get some federal stimulus money and you're talking $7 billion, you're talking about very serious cuts. Pat Quinn, the morning after, actually they ended on a Sunday night, early Monday morning. That Monday they met in Springfield, the leaders, with Pat Quinn to talk about it. They talked about it again in Chicago a few days later. And Pat Quinn is trying to impress the public that this is a serious thing. The budget will not be acted on, it looks like, and neither will the capital plan until a budget that the governor likes is passed by the legislature. That means they've got to come back to Springfield. We don't yet know when. We know that in this coming week the leaders and the governor will meet again to talk about it. In the meantime, the old Pat Quinn is emerging. He grew in Illinois politics over a 30-year trek as the populist, and he's been using those populist things. He was just in Chicago at the end of the week talking to a group like at a place where they do child care, saying those legislators want to cut child care by 50%. That's not what Illinois is like. And he talked about Abraham Lincoln wouldn't have done that. He talked about people living from paycheck to paycheck, which is kind of one of Pat Quinn's pet phrases over all of these years, because he represents the little people. He's got an interesting problem, because what he really has to do is tell legislators or convince them to come across and pass a bigger budget, possibly with an income tax increase, which seems like, for many different reasons, the key way they're going to have to go. John Cullerton, President of the Senate, says they're going to have to do that. But Mike Madigan, Speaker of the House, now says, hey, we're also talking about a lot of job cuts. So things are very much up in the air. And Pat Quinn is talking about, legislators who too often are doing what the special interests want. Well, I'm not sure that that's the way to convince them to do what you want, but the governor's trying to use the bully pulpit to do that. We'll see if it works, because while he is much more trusted than Rod Blagojevich was, Rod Blagojevich made such a show of berating members of the legislature when he was away from Springfield that still leaves a bad taste. And for Pat Quinn to be berating legislators as if to say they don't care about real people, that's not necessarily going to get them on his side. We'll see how it works.
Madigan came out of one of the leaders' meetings this week saying that, he was focused on living within your means. He was using these types of phrases. He noted the tax increase failed. He didn't seem to give a whole lot of hope that there would be any tax increase passing the House. I mean, what do you make of Madigan in this situation, and what do you think his role is? What do you think his stance going forward is going to be?
It's really hard to say. A lot of people, of course, look at the situation globally, because his daughter, Lisa Madigan, the Attorney General, may well run for governor. Some people have surmised, well, if state government is messed up enough now, then she could come in and act like the savior in running in a primary against Pat Quinn. We don't know if that's really what it is. On face value, what Madigan said after the session was he was told by the governor there were going to be, I think, 8 or 10 Republican votes on an income tax increase bill in the House. But when it became clear through Tom Cross, the House Republican leader, that those votes were not going to be on it, all Republicans were holding off a tax increase because they think certain reforms must be made first, that a lot of Democratic members who might have voted for it would not. That's why they only got 42 votes for the governor's tax plan in the House. They need 60, and as Madigan said, it's not going to be all Republican. Now, because we are past the end of May, they need an extraordinary majority to pass anything. They will need Republican votes. If they do get a tax increase, which still seems necessary to many, but iffy as to if it can get done, it's going to take some Republican votes, and that's going to take a lot of compromise from where we have been so far.
Right. So are we looking at an overtime session that'll go well into the summer, like we saw under the Blagojevich regime, or any idea of that?
The governor has basically set a deadline of July 1, when the new fiscal year begins, to get all of this done. It looks difficult. The only thing that to get it all done in that period of time, the only thing that makes it more possible than in recent years is that trust that does exist. I think even people in both parties, they don't think Pat Quinn is a devious guy. They don't think he is a double-dealing guy. He may be saying populist things that make legislators look bad, but he's honest. I think his word is considered good. So maybe there will be some coming together, as there has been in past years. But to get it all done, within just a few weeks, looks like it can be difficult, but strange things can happen. If it doesn't happen by July 1st, big trouble's coming, because then the new year starts, possibly without a state budget in place or with a partial one, and that can cause some real hurt to a lot of people.
Let's turn to the former First Lady, Patti Blagojevich. We saw her this week on a show on NBC called "I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here." She was shown in one of the episodes as eating a tarantula, and she discussed.
Patti, where hast thou gone?
She discussed a little bit the case with the former governor and the prosecution that he faces in federal court. What did you make of all that? I mean, is that a further black eye for the state, or did she come across looking favorable?
I am not a fan of reality TV. Yeah. I could only watch bits of this in my professional role. I did, and then some things rerun on the internet, which is good, so you get to a second bite at the apple, or the tarantula, as it would be.
Yeah.
I thought that she, at least in the initial show or two, came across as a pretty nice person. She clearly had a good audience in these other goofy quasi-celebrities on that island, and saying that her husband was railroaded through impeachment in Illinois because they don't know any better, so they believed everything she said, even though it was similar to the stuff Rod Blagojevich said, like he couldn't present testimony, when in fact he could have done that and didn't even show up until the last day of a trial situation in the Senate. So I thought she carried herself well. She did, in one of the episodes, talk negatively about kind of the crazy aunt that Rod Blagojevich had to run against. I think she was talking about Judy Bar-Topinka.
Right.
That was probably not a fair thing to do to someone like Topinka, who may have had her quirks and carried too big a cup of coffee around when she was running for governor, but someone who was in state government for many, many years as a legislator and state treasurer, and may not have been the greatest candidate for governor, but has not been arrested as Patti Blagojevich's husband was.
Right.
So I think she lost some points there, but in general probably did herself and her family as good as you can, given the fact that she's doing this goofy show in the first place.
If you're to analyze it further, is this an attempt to taint the jury pool, or is this just the Blagojeviches need some money and this is a way to get it?
There's probably a little bit of the idea to engender better public relations for this family, for whatever good that does.
Right.
But I think most of it is money, and Patti Blagojevich has said so clearly, and for her to be doing the things she's doing in that jungle situation in Costa Rica, you have to feel a little bit sorry for the whole situation. It's difficult. And we'll see where it goes, but she seems to be friendly with the other people on the show, so good for her.
Touch on one more state government thing before we go. The fumigation bill. What do state workers have anything to be fearful of going forward? Is that going to go anywhere before the overtime session's over, do you think?
The legislation is still alive, but on that last scheduled day of the session, May 31st, when they started to debate it in the Senate, and then President Cullerton pulled it out of the record and said, okay, there's too much confusion, even people on my side are against this. There's still the threat that it would come back. My guess is that it won't.
Yeah.
I think the message has been sent. The message from Mike Madigan, who introduced the bill, was, Pat Quinn, if we've got hangers-on from past, who are political people who may not be doing a good job from past two administrations, get rid of them or do the reviews quickly. You're not doing it fast enough. But by doing the bill that ended up taking in like 750 people, there's a lot of good people in that. Yeah. I think the legislators heard about that, and I think Cullerton heard about that. And you don't want to have everybody living in fear of losing their jobs if they're trying to do a good job. So my guess is the message has been sent, and that won't come up again. But if the legislature comes back into town, you never know what might happen.
Right. Well, that's all the time we've got today. To read more about state government news, please visit thedome.sj-r.com, our new portal to all things state government. Thanks again.